A very good evening. I'm Aditi Lama with the Tuesday night edition of South Asian News, Vision of Asia. We are coming to you from our studio in New Jersey. Welcome to the show. Let's begin the episode taking a look at the coronavirus pandemic updates and measures. The world is at more than 271 million COVID-19 cases, more than 5 million deaths. The new concerning Omicron continues to show higher rate of infection than other variants in the United Kingdom, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson is trying to place new restrictions to curb the spread of Omicron, which includes people working at home, wearing masks in public places, and COVID-19 passes to enter venues. Here in the United States, we are at more than 50 million cases of the coronavirus and more than 797,000 deaths. The Biden administration continues to stay focused on getting most of the nation vaccinated and now boosted with the vaccines. Currently, more than 200 million Americans, about 60% of the population, are fully vaccinated. So make sure you get your dose, whether it's the first or the booster. You can visit vaccines.gov for more information. With that, tonight we have more on COVID-19 updates along with Indian politics and an exclusive featuring the very popular Kal Penn on ITV Gold. So let's now take a look at the headlines coming in. Pfizer says COVID-19 pill nearly 90% effective against serious illness. Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Kamal Kalsi, New Jersey. Indian Parliament passes bill into repeal farm law. Senior BJP leader Dr. Vijay Jolly, ITV Gold Studio. Indo-American Arts Council presents Literary Festival 2021 featuring Kal Penn at the Delhi Arts Gallery, New York City. It's time for a short break on Vision of Asia South Asian News segment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. On coronavirus updates and measures, the new concerning Omicron variant has become dominant in South Africa, where it was identified, and on that today a study from the region suggested that 2 doses of Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine appears to give only 70% protection against hospitalization, suggesting weaker efficacy against the new variant, hence also suggesting the need for the third booster dose of the vaccine. Today also, Pfizer and BioNTech stated that final analysis of its antiviral COVID-19 pill showed nearly 90% efficacy in preventing hospitalizations and deaths in high-risk patients, and recent data suggests that the drug retains its effectiveness against the fast-spreading Omicron variant. Pfizer has now submitted the data to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for an emergency use authorization of the pill. On this and much more, earlier today we spoke with Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Kamal Kalsi. Here is the conversation about the big news that we are hearing in coronavirus news today. Pfizer has said that it's an antiviral pill that it has made is 90% effective in preventing hospitalizations and deaths. This pill is right now with the FDA, and there may be an emergency use authorization coming very soon. So the question to you is, what is this pill? What information do you have about it, and how effective is it really?
So we don't really know exactly how effective it's going to be, but the basics of this Pfizer pill are the fact that you need to use it within 72 hours of the infection taking place. So if you come to me, let's say to my office today, and you started having symptoms, let's say yesterday, then this pill potentially could be an effective tool in the fight against COVID, especially for patients that present with severe upper respiratory symptoms.
So how is it different?
And like you mentioned, it supposedly helps reduce morbidity and mortality by like 90%.
Right. So what about the other therapeutics that have been used so far? What information could you give us about that?
So generally speaking, look, if patients come to you and they are mildly symptomatic, which is the case for 95% of COVID patients out there, then their body's going to fight this off within about a week or two. There's really not a whole lot that needs to be done. You treat the symptoms. So if they've got congestion or a minor cough, then over-the-counter is like Mucinex, Dayquil, NyQuil, Robitussin will do just fine for them. Now, when it becomes a little more complicated is if they start developing chest pain or trouble breathing, then those types of symptoms need to be evaluated by a physician right away.
What about the monoclonal antibody? What is that exactly? And also, when should a patient get those?
So the monoclonal antibodies are essentially antibodies that are specific. They've been designed to attack the coronavirus, and then that helps your body's immune system eliminate the infection. So that has been super, super effective. All the patients that I've sent in for monoclonal antibody infusions have done very, very well, even the very sick ones. So again, it's another tool in our toolbox. The vast majority of COVID infections do just fine. But when they do get sicker, then we have monoclonal antibodies and other medications to help get them through this.
Right. Let's now talk about the numbers that are coming in today, doctor. We have more than 50 million cases of COVID-19 in this country, nearly 800,000 deaths. Cases are rising in colder regions of this country, but we're also hearing the same news from other parts of the country as well. How are you looking at this? You are in the ER. What are you seeing?
Yeah, the numbers definitely give me pause. Maybe about a year ago, I had written an op-ed talking about the fact that we may see 600,000 people die from COVID before we get a handle on this. And at the time it was 600,000 people dying from COVID was an unimaginable number, but now we've already surpassed 800,000, and I think we will pass 1 million in short order, unfortunately. What's going to happen is over the next month or two, we will see a rise in infections, especially from some of these new variants. Yes. And that unfortunately is going to happen because people, as they meet over the holidays, they will inevitably pass the infections around. And we've already seen a bump in infections from Thanksgiving, and we will most certainly see a similar rise in infection from the holiday season.
In India, farmers have called off a year-long protest after the government conceded a clutch of demands, including assurances to consider guaranteed prices for all produce instead of just rice and wheat. The move comes after Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that he would roll back 3 farm laws to end the longest-running farmers' protests ever, where millions of growers remained resolute in opposing the legislation. Farmers' leaders will now meet on January 15th to review progress on Indian government's assurances. The Indian government also will set up a panel of growers and government officials to find ways to ensure minimum support prices. On this and much more, we now have an exclusive conversation with senior leader of India's Bharatiya Janata Party, Dr. Vijay Jolly, who is the former member of Delhi's Legislative Assembly. Here is Dr. Jolly. My first question to you has to be about your trip to the United States. You are traveling across, you're meeting the community members, you're interacting with what's happening here. There's a lot of conversation on Indo-American relationships. How has that experience been for you so far? And please discuss with us the purpose of the visit.
Well, you see, I have been on a mission which has taken me 28 hours from India to New York, to Miami, and to Suriname, my first stop, on my mission to promote people-to-people friendship, of Indian diplomacy, of India's reaching out to the world, vibrant India, progressive India, friendly India, India represented by my dynamic Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. And in Suriname, I met the current President Chandrika Prasad Santokhi, presented him a Ram Navami shawl, and invited him to visit India later this next year. And on my second stop was my trip to Guyana, meeting the people of Indian origin in Guyana, which constitute a large chunk of the population of Guyana.
Right.
And also had the privilege of meeting and greeting the current Honorable President of Guyana, Dr. Muhammad Irfan Ali, and his Vice President, Bharat Jagdev, as well as his other minister in his government. And more so ever, also seeing the good work done by the Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, the Sanatan Dharma, and a host of other organizations in Guyana. And then my stop came over to Trinidad and Tobago. We're meeting with the foreign minister, meeting with the Indian diaspora, as well as calling on the Indian High Commissioner. And now I'm in United States of America. I'm privileged, I'm honored when I was invited to address a 2,000 strong BAPS community temple meeting held to celebrate the 100th centenary celebrations of Pramukh Swami of BAP temple in America. I think today India is progressing. India is no more the world of or the land of snake charmers. India is shaking hands with the mighty mighty in the world. And even in the corona pandemic, India exported and gifted corona vaccines to 97 countries of the world under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, because India considers this whole world to be one great family. And in my Prime Minister's world, this whole family is Vasudev Kutumbakam.
Yeah, the world is one place,
Yes.
one big place together. I want to talk to you about Prime Minister Modi's vision of India and Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav in a little bit, but I have to address a couple of issues with you which are very important, and it's gotten international limelight. And since we have you in the studio, let's talk about it. The farmers' protest, a year-long protest which has finally ended. Farmers are now going back to their villages. It was one of the biggest protests we've ever seen in the world. There was a lot of media coverage on it. As the senior member of the Bharatiya Janata Party, how do you hope to now take forward the relationships with these farmers? And what is the next step that the BJP is thinking right now with Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
You see, I would wish to state, this is the first time in democratic India, a legislation which was passed in the Indian Parliament in the interest of the Indian farming community by the government of the day, passed by Lok Sabha and as well as in the upper house of the Parliament. I wish to salute my Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, and his government, with seeing that after certain sections of the farming community which expressed their displeasure, which were not happy, sensing their displeasure and discontentment, he chose to take a path to reach out to every section of the Indian society, whether it is farmers, whether it is agriculturists, whether it is the traders, whether it is a middleman. And I am sure this is the reason why Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Bharatiya Janata Party came into complete majority in 2014 parliamentary election with 280 seats and repeating that same performance in the 2019 election with more than 320 seats. This is the inclusive, this is the people-centric approach of the Bharatiya Janata Party under the leadership of Mr. Narendra Damodar Das Modi, which has earned him the popularity. This is not a poll-bound decision. This is a decision of a government which has full mandate in the Indian Parliament and which takes every decision considering the people's emotions, people's demands, and in the present context, taking care of a particular section of the farmers' community related to Punjab and Haryana. I am sure it will go a very long way in the progressive farm and agriculture policies of Republic of India under the chairmanship, under the leadership, under the prime ministership, and under the government of Narendra Damodar Das Modi in the current and the future times.
We have now a segment of our exclusive conversation with actor, writer, producer Kal Penn at the Indo-American Arts Council's Literary Festival of this year. Held at the very popular Delhi Art Gallery in New York City, the Indo-American Arts Council hosted a special interactive discussion featuring Kal Penn on his new book titled You Can't Be Serious. Star of Harold and Kumar franchise, House and designated survivor, in You Can't Be Serious, the renowned actor recounts why he rejected the advice of his aunties and his guidance counselors, and instead of becoming a doctor, he chose the path of acting. Kal Penn in his journey confronted racism in Hollywood, became the face of Indian American artists in the United States, met his future husband, and worked in the Obama administration and returned back to acting after serving the public. And all of that has been told in heavy details in You Can't Be Serious. We spoke with Kal Penn at the event on the essence of this book and its reach, along with the continuous efforts of the Indo-American Arts Council in bringing together empowering and inspiring authors, artists, and more. Here are some highlights from Indo-American Arts Council's Literary Festival featuring Kal Penn. With ITV Gold and with camera person Manish, and today we're joined by none other than Mr. Kal Penn, actor, producer, writer, and a person who's literally done everything you can think about in this industry. My first question to you has to be, your book, You Can't Be Serious, right? It talks about everything in your life. Sure. It talks about you being in comedies, it talks about you being in serious TV dramas, it talks about you finding the love of your life, your parents, and how he started with just $12, like all these stories. What resonates the most to you when I say, a story that like you had a hard time accepting, but you're really glad you added into the book? What would you say?
I think one of the reasons I wanted to write this book, and thank you for the kind introduction, by the way, is there wasn't really a book like this when I was a kid, and when I say kid, I mean everything from high school through maybe after college. I remember the 25-year-old version of me trying to navigate a career in the arts, knowing that I had an interest in public service, and really not knowing how to do that as a young person who happens to also be Indian American. And especially in those days, I'm going to make myself sound old here. But especially in those days, there is a lot of support from the community now for artists, this wonderful gallery that we're in, the fact that there's a literary festival here in New York. It's incredible. And it didn't used to always be that way, And so I think one of the tough decisions in writing the book was to talk about some of the challenges we've faced as a community when it's come to accepting the arts or accepting what we used to call non-traditional careers. And the reason I talk about it is because I want to celebrate how far the community's come and how much love they've shown me and other artists over the years. So when you ask that question, it's not that it was difficult to write about. It was just something that I wrote about because I would have wanted the 25-year-old version of me to be able to read it, My manager, I've only had one acting manager my entire career, And I describe him in the book, in the audiobook, and this is pretty accurate, I'm told. He's like every character from the HBO show Entourage in one person. So he's like a lion, but a total sweetheart, but also just a ridiculous human being who's incredibly loyal, and I love him dearly. And the day that I left my White House job, he called and he said, you should write a book. And I said, well, no, what would I write a book about? He goes, well, you realize nobody has gone from acting to working in politics? And I was like, literally the governor of California is Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that doesn't really, and then I was like, Ronald Reagan and Ben Stein, maybe they're all Republicans, but it has been done many times before. And so I didn't think about it for about 5 years, and then about 4 years ago, 4 years ago, I kind of thought, excuse me, that maybe I did have a story to tell. So I started thinking about the 25-year-old version of me, the kid who was trying to figure himself out and didn't necessarily have a book he could buy or a podcast to listen to that talked about having multiple interests in life. And then also, the last several years especially, this idea that your life can have more than one path is something we've all grown to embrace a lot. And the thing that you do to put, to pay your rent might not be the only passion that you have. And I thought, well, maybe I do have a story that I can share with people. So those are kind of the two sets of people that made me think, maybe I'll write a book. Yeah.
Was it hard to write about racism in Hollywood for you? Was it difficult to go back to, or was it something that, again, you wanted to make sure that people knew about this?
Yeah, I think similar to that last question, I think the reason that I wrote about some of the early issues with race and misogyny and things that I and many other people experienced by virtue of what we were trying to do and those barriers to entry, again, talked about them because I love what I do so much. I love being a storyteller. I love the chance to be an actor. I love that the industry that I love and work in Hollywood has changed so much in the last 15 years. That it's almost a love letter to, hey, isn't this amazing that things have moved so far? Obviously acknowledging the work that we still have left to do, but that's definitely a part of it, yeah. One of the subtexts of this book is how systems change, and how wonderful it is that systems can and do change by people who get in and kind of shake it up. And
not fight and get feisty right away.
There are different ways of changing the system. I think you and I may differ in our approach, but we both have the same end goal.
I'm going to take your advice now, Pen.
The point was to celebrate that, and the point was to look at this movie that aired last night. I couldn't imagine even pitching it 10 years ago. So that's one of the reasons it took so long, is putting all those stories together, figuring out whether anybody would actually resonate with it. 2 years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, I was cleaning out an old box in my closet, and I had saved so many casting notices, so many of the more racist casting notices. And I took some pictures of them and put them on Twitter, thinking all right, this will be a good benchmark of whether there's a story there to tell or not. And it immediately blew up. BuzzFeed did a whole thing about it, and all these different kind of blogs and journalists reached out. I was like, oh, okay, so this is a thing. Yeah. This is a thing of interest. That's good to know. And then the last 8 months of writing was just fact checking. So some of these early stories, especially about navigating spaces as a man of color, I wanted to call people who were from early in my career, like when I first moved to LA, who I haven't spoken to in the longest time, and not put words in their mouth, but think hey, you were in that audition room when, I tell a story about this movie I did called Van Wilder. Really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Ryan Reynolds was awesome. He really encouraged me to improvise.
Let's go right back into the book. I have to ask you this question. Okay. Out of all the stories that we hear about in the book, if one of the stories was taken out of context, what would sound the most ridiculous and the most funny? Out of context, yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to be able to tell it on this show, so that eliminates about half the stories. Out of context, let's see. Out of context. That's such a good question. I think it would be, there's a section where I describe, I wasn't very good at math. But when, my dad's an engineer, my mom is a chemist, and in a family like that, you kind of think, how is it possible for you to not be good at math? Yeah. And so there's a section of the book where I say, bringing home your report card, even if you got a B plus is an 87, and my parents would say, what happened to the other 13 points? And I know everybody can relate to this, but also out of context, if somebody hasn't had that experience, they might read that and go, wait, what? But a B plus is really good. I'm like, a B plus is like an Indian F, is the joke that I make in the book.
And with this, we wrap up our show for the night. Please send us your suggestions and get your voices and organizations on our show. You can email us on events@itvgold.com or follow us on our Facebook handle At ITV Gold, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for free access to many of our popular shows. Thank you for joining us tonight from Edison, New Jersey. This is Vision of Asia, and I am Aditi Lamba. Take care and be well.